and voting.
And I think the tape recorder, is that going? There we go.
Get you closer to help.
Senate will please come to order. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
We will have a, we'll have a moment of silence to start the day. Thank you. We now have announcements. I'll be actually doing a quick announcement first, on behalf of the Committee on Committees, Committee of Conference was requested on S14. The following senators will be appointed to that as requested by the Committee on Committees. Senator Hashim, Senator Vyhovsky, and Senator Norris. Senator from Chittenden Central, do you have an announcement?
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would move that we suspend our rules and bring SR 11 off the notice calendar for immediate action. For Senators' knowledge, this is the Senate resolution supporting Abenaki communities in Vermont, and it coincides with Heritage Week. So with that, Mr. President, I would move that we suspend our rules.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate action off the notice calendar SR 11. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended your rules in order to take up SR 11 for immediate action. SR 11 was read for the first time and referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which is considered the same and recommends that the resolution ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the resolution by title.
SR 11, Senate resolution relating to supporting the continuing resiliency and strengthening of the Abenaki communities in Vermont and encouraging a greater appreciation and respect for Abenaki culture during Abenaki Recognition and Heritage Week and throughout the year.
Now you've heard the second reading of the resolution for the report of the Committee on Government Operations. Senator from Washington, Senator Watson.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. It's my honor today to rise in honor of Abenaki Recognition and Heritage Week, which the governor has designated as the first week in May. It's an opportunity for us to celebrate and lift up Abenaki heritage, and it's a week to remember and reflect on the state of Vermont's interactions with the Abenaki tribes who have lived on this land for thousands of years. The governor has already signed a proclamation, and the other body has passed a resolution honoring Abenaki Recognition and Heritage Week, and now it's our turn. So I'm grateful that we were able to bring this resolution to the Senate floor for passage during Abenaki Heritage Week. The Senate Government Operations Committee heard from Rich Holshoe, who is the chair of the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs, and the Government Operations Committee found the resolution favorable with a vote of 6-0-0 and asked for the support of the Senate.
Now you've heard the report of the Committee on Government Operations. The question is, shall the resolution be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of SR 11. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, in recognition of the fact that Abenaki Heritage Week ends today, I would move that the Senate suspend its rules and move SR 11 through all remaining stages of passage.
Now the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to place SR 11 through all remaining stages of passage. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to place SR 11 through all remaining stages of passage. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the resolution by title.
SR 11, Senate resolution relating to supporting the continuing resiliency and strengthening of the Abenaki communities in Vermont and encouraging a greater appreciation and respect for Abenaki culture during Abenaki Recognition and Heritage Week and throughout the year.
Now you've heard the third reading of the resolution. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the resolution? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have adopted SR 11. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move one last time that the Senate suspend its rules to message our actions.
Senator, just for clarification, being a Senate resolution, I believe we have taken all actions necessary.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, we have one bill for referral from appearing for notice, H-270. H-270 affecting the expenditures of the state will be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. We have a few bills for reference, House bills. The first being H-490. H-490 under Rule 44A will be referred, has to be read the first time. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H-490, an act relating to approving the merger of the Village of Lyndonville with the Town of Linden.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Rules. We have H-506 introduced by Representative Mulvaney, Stanek, and others. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H-506, an act relating to approval of amendments to the election boundary provisions of the Charter of the City of Burlington.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill. It will be referred to the Committee on Rules. We now have for consideration H-507, also introduced by Representative Mulvaney, Stanek, and others. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H-507, an act relating to approval of amendments to the polling place provisions of the Charter of the City of Burlington.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill. Also under Rule 44A will be referred to Committee on Rules. We have H-508, introduced by Representative Mulvaney, Stanek, and others. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H-508, an act relating to approval of an amendment to the ranked choice voting provisions of the Charter of the City of Burlington.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill. Also, per Rule 44A, will be referred to Committee on Rules. And we have H-509, introduced by Representative Mulvaney, Stanek of Burlington, and others. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H-509, an act relating to approval of amendments to the voter qualification provisions of the Charter of the City of Burlington.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill. Also, under Rule 44A, will be committed to the Rules Committee. We will now take up the orders of the day. We have, are we going to take up?
Mr. President, I would move that we pass over H-53.
We'll just pass over without a need, without objection. We will take up H-161. Third reading was ordered on H-161. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H-161, an act relating to issuance of burning permits.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill, and the question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You have passed H-161.
Mr. President?
Senator from Chittenden Central.
I'm sorry, S-91. I don't see the Chair of Judiciary here, so I would move that we pass over that as well.
All right, we'll pass over that for the time being without objection, which brings us to H-222. The House has proposed an amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment. So the pending question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment on H-222? Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. H-222 is the opioid financing and policy bill that we passed out of committee. The House has returned it with some changes that we concur with as a committee, and our vote in committee was 410. On page 2454, you'll see the first proposal of amendment is to change the phrase persons in recovery to the word tenants. This doesn't change the rights delivered to the individuals who are in the recovery programs. The second instance of amendment is the addition of some definitions that are then used later on in the bill. And this relates to the drug checking and provisions that are in the bill. So looking at testing for impurities in some of the opioids. And then the third instance of amendment is a strike all in section 12, and then the insertion, they didn't change our language, they simply inserted the definitions or the phrases that are in the definitions earlier. So, for example, under A in section 12, an approved drug checking service provider is inserted into the information, and that continues through that section. And then on C of 5 of that section 12, a new sentence is added that clarifies how the drug checking occurs. And then another new sentence is added, similarly utilizing the new phrases representing the approved drug checking service provider. And the new sentence is at the end of E in that section. And then finally, the fourth instance of amendment is a date change. I'm asking for the Advisory Committee on Opioid Settlement to report annually on or before January 15th. This takes out the budget process language that was concerning to so many of us. And then the fifth proposal amendment brings into consistency the syringe service provisions that are also in the budget. So the changes are an improvement, and we ask for your vote to concur with the House proposal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment on H2 22? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have concurred with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment on H2 22. We are going to pass over H45 for the time being, which would bring us to H102. Third reading has been ordered for H102. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H102, an act relating to the Art in State Buildings Program.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed H102. We now have up for consideration third reading of H206, which was ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading on H206? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H206, an act relating to miscellaneous changes affecting the duties of the Department of Vermont Health Access.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you're past H206. We now have up for consideration H305. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H305, an act relating to professions and occupations regulated by the Office of Professional Regulation.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
No.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed H305. We now have H414 up. Third reading was ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H414, an act relating to establishing an unused drug repository for Vermont.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed H414. We now have up for consideration H493. Third reading was ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H493, an act relating to capital construction and state bonding.
You've heard the third reading of the bill, and the question is, shall the bill pass? Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I've answered all the questions offline, and I think my committee has as well. I hope that we have at least, and to everybody's satisfaction. The one part was about the PBC testing, and we just double checked, and nowhere do we have in the bill anything about PCB testing. So there's no cuts, there's no increases. That's not in the bill. So thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed H493. This now brings up for consideration H165. H165 was read for the first time and was referred to the Committee on Education, which considers that when the bill is amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill is then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which also indicated that when the bill is amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H165, an act relating to school food programs and universal school meals.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill, and for the report of the Committee on Education, the Senator from Windham, Senator Hashim.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this bill is being passed around right now, and before I do a section by section, I do just want to share that this bill is, for the most part, really just a continuation of the Universal School Meals Program as we've previously seen it. This has been a very successful benefit to the kids in our state, and at the end of the report, I'll touch on some of those experiences. So section 1 are the findings that describe the benefits of this program. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but you do have them in front of you. Section 2 is the definitions section. This primarily includes some technical changes and new definitions. Specifically, this section adds the approved independent school definition and the universal meals supplement definition in subsections 4 and 5, respectively. There are also additional definitions under subsection 5, which spells out how rates are identified for both breakfast and lunch. The remainder of section 2 requires all public schools to operate a federal school meals program under the Child Nutrition Act and the National School Lunch Act. This is also the section that allows approved independent schools to opt into this program if they choose. And I just want to note that this section makes our Universal School Meals Program the most generous compared to the 9 other states that offer similar programs. No other states provide an opt-in option for independent schools in the Universal School Meals Program for their publicly tuitioned students. It would also be beneficial in this section to discuss how the reimbursement process works for those who are curious. The Federal School Meals Program reimburses each meal served to a student in a school that's participating in the program, and each meal must meet the nutritional standards in the program. And as I've previously demonstrated, math is not my strong suit, but with the following section, if you have any questions, I'll be able to dive a bit deeper. The amount of reimbursement on the meal depends on a family's income for the student. If a student's family's income is 130% of the federal poverty level, then the meal is fully reimbursed. If a student's income is between 131 to 185% of the federal poverty level, they are eligible for reduced priced meals. If they're above 185%, a small portion will be reimbursed. The state supplement is meant to bring all meals to full reimbursement. And section 3 is the real substantive change for the bill. In fact, Mr. President, some folks might think this is the meat and potatoes of the bill. Section 3 addresses the qualification for the Universal School Meals Supplement under specific situations. It creates a new section in Chapter 133 of Title 16, which is the state funding of public education chapter. The change here makes it so that the Universal School Meals Supplement is an allowable use of the education fund continuing forward. It will treat Universal School Meals Supplement like any other categorical aid, such as transportation reimbursement or the flexible pathways funding. Section 4 this is the section that creates a 20% requirement to use locally produced foods. As we've seen in the program, this is a great way for local farms to have a reliable income and a connection with their local schools. This section contains technical amendments and also includes the ability for independent schools to use locally produced foods if they decide to opt in to the program. Section 5 is the effective date. And so I just want to briefly describe my own experience with the school meals program. About a year ago, when I heard about universal school meals, I remember thinking to myself that, yeah, it sounds nice, it makes sense, and let's make sure kids are fed. And then I visited a local high school in my district and sat with a group of students and staff to hear about the program. And when I heard the stories from the kids and the world of difference that the teachers and staff noticed, I walked away recognizing that universal school meals is going to be one of my top priorities in the legislature. I heard from kids who said that their grades went up, their moods became more positive, and they were overall just doing better. For example, one student had failed his driving test multiple times, and on the day he finally passed it, the instructor asked him, what was different about today compared to all the other times you tested? And the student said that that day was the first time he had breakfast before he actually took the test. And there were multiple stories along similar lines from the group of students he chatted with. At one point in the conversation, as the wheels were turning in my head and I was planning further down the road about legislation, I asked the kids, has anyone ever said they don't want universal school meals? Are there any potential downsides to this? They all looked at me like I had two heads, and they asked back, why would anyone ever not want kids to have free food at school? There were no downsides. And I've stated here in the past that providing people with their basic needs is one of the first steps in making sure people succeed. We've heard about declining test scores, mental health issues, behavioral challenges, and more in our schools. And there are many paths to addressing those concerns. And making sure that kids have their basic needs met first is one of the first steps. And I have heard concern in the policymaking process about the idea of providing free food to kids who may have the means to pay for their own food. I respect and appreciate that concern from others, but I would have to respectfully disagree with it. Is it possible that kids who have financial security are going to get a free meal? Yes, it is possible. But if that is the only conceivable concern to this bill, the fact that a rich kid might get a free meal alongside other kids who are impoverished, that's definitely not something that's going to keep me up at night. When I was at that high school, I saw kids from all sorts of demographics sitting together and breaking bread. And that wasn't just from my own observations and assumptions, that's what I was told by the students as well. And food brings people together. I would say, think about all the times that we in this chamber have grabbed lunch or dinner with people who have different views than our own, and then we realize, at least most of the time, that we're not that different after all. That is just one additional moral benefit that we're providing to our kids, setting them up for success, along with the obvious nutritional benefits of the Universal School Meals Program. For senators who may still have concerns about this program, and I am optimistic about it passing, I would strongly urge you to go spend an hour at your local public school and talk to students about the benefits of having universal school meals in their cafeteria. We heard from a long list of witnesses. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but if anyone has questions about who we heard from or who we did not hear from, I'll go through that list. Mr. President, the vote on this bill was 3-0, and I ask for the Senate support.
The bill is then referred to the Committee on Appropriations for the report of the Committee on Appropriations. The Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Appropriations did go over this bill. We had, I would say, a spirited discussion. And in the end, you will see the appropriation on page 2458 of the calendar. The way this will work is $29 million has been appropriated from the reserves that are now in the Ed Fund. Going forward, it will be part of Ed Fund funding, just generally speaking. Our vote in committee, I believe, was 7-0-0, and we would ask for the Senate's support.
Thank you, Senator. The question now is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in, did you have your hand up? Would you care to speak? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. My amendment,
Excuse me, I apologize. I didn't realize you were preparing to offer your amendment. That will be after this vote.
Okay.
I thought you were rising to speak on the present question.
Thank you.
The present question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the Committee on Appropriations? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You have amended the bill as offered by the Committee on Appropriations. Senator from Rutland has an amendment as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. My amendment can be found on page 2458 of your calendar. And it moves that the Senate propose to the House that the bill be amended in Section 3, 16 VSA, Section 4017 by striking out subsection C in its entirety and inserting in lieu of therefore of a new subsection C to read as follows. Approved independent schools from school funds appropriated to the agency from the Education Fund for the Universal Meals Supplement. The agency shall provide a universal meals supplement for the cost of each meal actually provided to each student enrolled in the approved independent school, where meals are offered to all students at no charge pursuant to subsection 1264A1B of this title. An approved independent school is eligible for the Universal Meals Supplement only if it operates a food program that makes available a school lunch as provided in the National School Lunch Act, as amended in a school breakfast, as provided in the Child Nutrition Act, is amended to each attending student who qualifies for these meals under these acts every school day. Reimbursement from state funds shall be available only to approved independent schools and maximize access to federal funds for the cost of the school breakfast and lunch program by participating in the community eligibility provision under 7 CFR section 254.9F or provision 2 under 7 CFR section 245.9B of these programs or any other federal provision that in the opinion of the agency draws down the most possible federal funding for meals served in that program. At the start of each school year, the Agency of Education may require that a school food authority requesting the Universal Meals Supplement begin a new cycle of the relevant federal provision and group sites in a manner that agency determines will maximize the drawdown of federal funds. And then 3, second breakfast as allowed under 7 CFR section 220.9A do not qualify for reimbursement under this subsection. So I want to make a statement that I do support H-165 and I will vote in favor of it. But my statement is when the Universal Meal Bill was first proposed, I didn't believe that students whose parents could afford to pay for their meals should be getting a free meal. Proponents of the bill justified it by saying that every student should get a free meal. They said that the kids who could not afford the meals would be stigmatized if the kids whose parents could afford to pay for the meals didn't eat with them. So I recommended a card system so that everybody would appear to be treated equally and the families that could afford to pay could be charged for their child's meals. No, they said everybody will still know who the poor kids are that can't afford the meal. To be fair and equitable, if we're going to pay for one child's meals, we should pay for every child's meal, regardless of whether they're tuition to an approved independent school or the parents are paying to send that child there. That child's education and meals are being paid for by all parents by their property taxes. That's my amendment as follows. amendment is about. So, I do support H-165, but due to the lack of support of the amendment by my colleagues in the Senate Education Committee, I decided that I want to withdraw my amendment today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Without objection, we'll consider the amendment withdrawn. Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been a difficult bill, and I am not going to support it because what it does not do. It does nothing to improve the nutrition of the hungriest children in the state of Vermont. Yes, several days ago, we talked about the rateable reduction and the REACH-UP program and how the level of benefits are relative to the families. And we had a statistic that a family of 3, I think, has a benefit of $850 a month. That is to meet the whole needs of that family: rent, clothing, food. So I am very troubled. What this bill will do is assure universal meals, and that will mean children from the most affluent communities and the most affluent families will have the benefit, and that is wonderful. I would say that I've heard the argument that our meals and free meals create a stigma. And that used to be true because, in fact, there were schools that would line the children up separately if they got the free or reduced meals. It was embarrassing and it was stigmatizing. But those days are over. But don't kid ourselves. Students know whose children are poor. They know because of the phone. They know it because of their clothing. They know it because of anything. And in some cases, it's because the bus picks them up at the motel. So I am sorry that this does nothing to address the children that go home that have nothing to eat when they go home. Those are the children that our charitable organizations send home with backpacks. Or the teachers will take and give them food to take home on a weekend. They are chronically and persistently hungry. We all know what it's like to be hungry, but most of us go home and there is ample food in the cupboard. So I am concerned that certainly we're raising money to do this. This is not free. It's $29 million, which is about 3 cents on your property tax rate. And this is a very uncertain environment as it relates to the demands on our educational system and on our ed fund. We know that we have PCBs, which actually put all children at health risk, rich or poor. And we also know that we have the weighting study that could have an impact on property tax rates. So we're considering this bill in a very uncertain fiscal environment as it relates to the cost of our educational system. I realize I am probably a lone voice here. I have been in public service for a long time, and I have seen how we make choices and how oftentimes there's tremendous advocacy for one group over another. Last year, I would point out, thanks to our finance committee listening to me, we did an increase on the state supplement to our AABD benefit to the federal SSI benefit. That is the old aged, blind, and disabled program. If we look at who's hungry in the state, it's our poorest children and it's our seniors. Last year, there was really no advocacy for the AABD. In fact, when I went into finance, people weren't even aware we had such a program. And yet the increase that we did last year was very strategic, and it went to our seniors and people with disabilities who are truly poor and on the edge. So we make choices every day about how we allocate our precious public resources. And so I am maybe a voice. I've been called the old state lady because of what I've done throughout my life. But I would simply say that I am deeply troubled that there's so much advocacy for the benefit that would flow to all children. We heard one family. In fact, because of the community benefit and universal meals, they got the EBT card for $120 for the summer. And I said, isn't that nice? We're sending an EBT card to a family who went to Rome last year and Paris this year. And for me, it is, I am just saying, do not think that this bill is helping address the hunger and the chronic, persistent poverty that thousands of our children are experiencing today. They are already getting free meals. So this is a matter of saying, where are our priorities? A couple of years ago, I suggested if you wanted to go midway, go to a Dr. Dinosaur level. But that was summarily dismissed. It would not have had such a tremendous impact. It would have been much more strategic in terms of where there was a potential for children to be without food. So I am a voice of saying this is expensive. This is going to add 3 cents on your taxes. And if you think that it is doing something to address the hunger of our hungriest children, this is not what this bill does. And we have all received stacks of support for this bill, no question about it. But many of those are equating universal meals with hungry children. And I simply say that that is not the case from my perspective, because this bill does nothing to address and improve the nutrition of our children who are most at risk. And for that reason, I am not going to support this bill. Thank you.
Senator from Bennington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I used to share the concerns and the perspective of the senator from Caledonia, no question about it. In fact, I stood on this floor last year and said that. And then I heard the testimony. And I, for one, have found this through the testimony to realize that a couple of things. Number one, there is a missing middle out there in Vermont. There are families that do need this, that do not qualify for some of the benefits that the senator from Caledonia County mentioned. And those parents came to our committee, and those kids have talked to us, teachers have talked to us, superintendents have talked to us, and said what a huge difference this is making. It's also, I think at this point, probably the best COVID recovery step this state has taken. And let me tell you why. What parents and teachers and principals are seeing is a new kind of, and frankly, I don't know how it's happening or why it's happening, but this breakdown of who's getting a meal, who's not getting a meal, has caused kids to socialize around breakfast like schools have never seen before. Socialize around lunch, taken the burden off of kids who feel bad for their friends, who don't get, who might be hungry and don't have access to some of the offerings in their schools. I completely agree with those that we are always looking at the various pressures on the budget, but I'm finding through our committee's testimony that this is a successful program. It's helping kids, it's helping families. Some kids are leaving with backpacks full of food. There's more of an integrated system and people thinking about how to feed the kids, how to talk to kids about nutrition, how to engage our local farmers. I hope the Senate will support this bill. For me, again, I'll just conclude by saying I was absolutely where Senator Kitchell was, Senator from Caledonia was on this issue. But the testimony was so compelling. Even people that were concerned about the cost came in and said, whatever you do, don't stop it because it is working. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Orleans.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I've worked on universal school meals for at least 6 or 7 years. On behalf of the agricultural small producers of fruits and veggies, being able to get their products into schools throughout the state. And this past year, I know when we took testimony on how that was all going and happening, farms or small farms are selling between $3 and $4 million more produce to the schools than in the past. And the meat industry is just really getting started in supplying universal meals with fresh, wholesome Vermont-raised beef. As most of you know, I've been here a long time and seeing a lot of bills pass and a lot of bills fail. And, you know, this particular bill, it's all I've received is very positive phone calls, messages, talking with people at meetings, never one negative comment. And I mean, I attend a lot of meetings, and nobody has said, what the heck are you crazies doing in Montpelier now by doing this or doing that? It's almost like, golly, we finally did something really right. And, you know, I would just hope that we pass this, get it behind us, and keep our school districts, our children, our parents on the good side of this and happy with what we're doing. Well, thank you.
Question is, shall the bill be read third time? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to provide some comments before we vote. And that is, you know, I was on the Education Committee last year when we passed the same bill. And I was a big supporter. I probably would have voted for it if it was $50 million. I thought, for a lot of the reasons that we heard today, that it's something that we need to do. But I saw it as basically a pilot project that we needed to continue through after COVID and see what the federal funding was going to be like, see what the value was. I share a lot of the concerns from the Center of Caledonia on, is this the best way to put our money towards feeding those that are most vulnerable or those at most risk of going hungry. I'm not convinced it is, but I am convinced enough of the other values of the program that I'm going to be voting for it. I think there's a lot of this social emotional learning benefits that go along with this. However, I'm concerned that we're putting it into the Ed Fund to be an automatic expenditure. Maybe, you know, I still see it as basically as a pilot project. I was going to consider an amendment that would maybe make this one-time funding so we can still look at, is this the best way to fund it? You know, is this money going to buying what we want it to buy, or is there other ways of doing it? You know, if it really is about just feeding the most vulnerable, we could just raise the income level. You know, for maybe half the amount of money, we could feed all the children under 350% of the poverty level or something like that. We wouldn't get some of those other benefits, but I think that's what I think we need to learn. But what we're doing here is we had an appropriation amendment because we still needed to appropriate that money from the education fund. But going forward, we won't have that. This won't be part of the appropriation process. It'll just be automatically in our tax base. So you might not hear, you might hear people complaining about the property tax, but they won't know about the impact that this universal meals is having on that. And I have a concern about our property tax as far as not being one of our more progressive taxes. We have income in sensitivity, and we have the renter rebate, but basically those that are the lowest income, we haven't been able to change the value of homes that get the price sensitivity. So there's some concerns I have about the way we fund it. And I'm just hoping when we come back next year, even though this is going to be baked into the education fund, I think we still need to have a conversation about, is this the best use of the money? Is it the education fund the best source for that? Thank you.
Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very interested in this debate, and I have a lot of empathy and respect for the senator from Caledonia, and I agree with a lot of what you say, and I know that this is a hard vote for you. I, however, am very supportive of this program. As a mom with kids still in school, just barely, but still there, I have seen the benefit of my kids being in a school with universal school lunch and being able to not worry about who's going to pay for lunch and what kids remembered their lunch. I've also been a substitute teacher in a school and been with kids during lunch, which is, I tell you, you should go to a middle school lunchroom and you will see complete and utter chaos, but they all know what's going on. And one of the things that adds to the chaos is who's going to pay for the meals and how they're going to pay for the meals and who remembered their money that day and who remembers their number that they're supposed to give the cashier and all that stuff. So it would also help from a perspective of administering the school meals. And to the senator from Washington's point about whether this is something that belongs in the Ed Fund, I think it absolutely belongs in the Ed Fund. Kids cannot learn if they have not eaten breakfast and lunch. This is just as important to kids' education as books are, as technology is, as teachers. Well, maybe not as teachers, but as books and technologies and desks and all the other supplies and materials in the room, in the school. If kids are not fed, they can't pass their driver's license test. They can't learn how to read. They can't understand what's going on in their school. And it's really crucial, just like all the other things that the Ed Fund it pays for. And I actually think that the $29 million appropriation that is cited, with all due respect to our joint fiscal office, is high. I don't think it will actually cost $29 million. I think we'll also be able to pull down more federal funding by being able to have more kids eat lunch in school on universal school lunch, and the net cost will be lower to the state. We don't see line items in the education fund for books and all the other things we spend money on, just like we wouldn't for school lunch. And one further comment, we have the most progressive funding system for our schools in the country, And I stood on this floor last year for an hour explaining the funding formula to colleagues. It is one of the best in the country. It can always be better, for sure. It can always be improved on, but it is one of the most progressive in the country. And this is one of the most crucial things we need to spend money on to make sure that our kids can learn, and I'm absolutely supportive of it. Thank you, Mr. President. Something's happening behind me. I can see.
There was a cell phone chime, and we were doing our best to assess. My apologies for our distraction. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have ordered third reading of H165. We now have up for consideration H492. H492 was read for the first time, referred to the Committee on Finance, which is considered the same, and recommends that when amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H492, an act relating to setting the homestead property tax yields and the non-homestead property tax rate.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. For the report of the Committee on Finance, the Senator from Washington, Senator Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been doing this bill for quite a few years, and I would say this is probably the least controversial and smoothest yield bill I have ever done. It's very straightforward. There are four amendments in the calendar. They changed the dollar amount to reflect the two things that the Senate Committee on Finance did to the bill. The bill came to us from the House. The only thing that wasn't just, this is what the numbers are, was that they said they had a surplus. They set aside $22 million on the bottom line with the caveat that it should be included in next year's December 1st letter. This would result
in lowering the tax rates next year because we are starting with waiting. We've got a couple other things going on. The economy's not overly predictable at this rate, and they wanted a hedge there for next year. Senate Finance took what the House had done, and we subtracted. We subtracted two things. First, universal school meals does show in here at 29 million. When we did this last year and when I reported this bill, we knew you didn't feed kids for 1 year and then stop feeding them. We just assumed that was going to be an ongoing expense. We were told last year that it was going to cost much less, that we're going to find much more kids that needed, that qualified for federal subsidies. There was a major push, and it's still costing somewhere around $29 million. So we're thinking that's probably a pretty stable thing, and you will not see that on this sheet. It will go into the base cost just like textbooks and everything else does. We did add, we did subtract $9.1 million, and that was, I believe was budget adjustment. We did an agreement with the teachers for the COLA, that there was an agreement in the past that the COLA couldn't go above a certain amount. This year inflation went above that amount. There was an agreement reached, and the actual cost of the payment this year was covered in budget adjustment. But not wanting to dig ourselves into the hole we're still digging ourselves out of with underfunding the pension fund, because that is an ongoing agreed benefit. There was a $9.1 million capitalization to the pension fund to make it whole for that agreement. And then the other, it isn't really a subtraction. Apparently in the past, the Department of Taxes gets a fee for their cost in computing the taxes, taking and using it. It's a fee that was being taken off the top. We never saw it. There was, in a move to transparency, that $1.1 million is now showing there as a transfer to it's the department, it's the IT maintenance fund, because we use the school taxes, we pay our share into that maintenance fund of the Department of Taxes. So it is showing up here, but it is not a new expense. When the December 1st letter came out, which tells towns if they budget the way it looks like they're projecting their budgets, what their yields and tax rates will be. There's yields, but I think most of us still think in terms of tax rates. The average homestead property tax rate was $1.386. When the House finished, it was $1.308. Because of our additions, it is $1.311. But the projection is, let's see, on line 8, average percentage bill change. So that's how much, because I think we've all heard property values are going up. There's issues with the CLA. We're in a time of quite a bit of turmoil out there in the area of property values. So even though the tax rates are down, the average change we are presenting is that the average tax bill will go up 4.06%. So the vote in committee, I believe, was 601, and we ask that this body concur.
Question now is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the Committee on Finance? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have amended the bill as offered by the Committee on Finance. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of H 492. We are now going to return to the top of the calendar to H 53. H 53 passed the House, then passed the Senate with proposal of amendment, and the House has now proposed a further proposal of amendment. So the pending question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment? I believe there's an amendment to be offered. Senator from Bennington.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Judiciary Committee was surprised to see certain sections added to the bill, but they really are the purview of the Senate Finance Committee. And so I asked the chair of the Senate Finance Committee to review the changes made by the other body. We are fine with this, with H53, as long as the Finance Committee amendment is adopted. So I would like to yield to the senator from Washington for the amendment.
The senator from Bennington yields to the senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. We too were a little surprised to see an increase in the marriage license fee go on to a bill on traffic, on license suspension. But we understand that this is the Center for Crime Victim Services. They are already getting a portion of the marriage license fee. I remember when we did that, and I was correct. It was in 2008. It was in the middle of the beginning of the Great Recession. We tried to raise money, but we didn't want to raise taxes, and we didn't have any to appropriate, but these were good services. And we attached surcharges to fees. One of them was marriage license. The other one were traffic fees, and we are now trying to work. The result of the traffic fees was we ended up with thousands of Vermonters with license suspended simply because they couldn't pay the fee because it was so easy to add surcharges to it. So at least those of us that have been here long enough to have memories, but the Committee on Finances, we want to make sure that crime victim services get funded at least through the next year, but we are not overly comfortable with having what we believe are essential services having to rely on fees on basically unrelated services to pay for it. We talked about putting it on the divorce fee, but apparently that's a judicial fee and there's separation of powers and they get really upset when we monkey. So it is there, but we put a sunset on it or ask for concurrence with the sunset so that we will be able to come back next time and take a look at this and see if this is indeed the appropriate way to fund these services. And the reason they need the money here is because we are working so hard to not have those fees on the traffic citations. And so they're losing money on that end and they need to make it up.
The question is, this is becoming fun. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment with further proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have concurred with the House proposal of amendment of the Senate proposal of amendment with further proposal of amendment on H53. Let's see. We are now concluded the orders of the day. I believe Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I would move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 10 a.m.
I believe we were going to run through some confirmations first.
I thought we had a motion in announcements.
We will be taking that up momentarily. Not quite yet.
Understood.
Senator from Addison, I believe. Yes, Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I move that we suspend the rules and take up all the confirmations starting on page 2578 with the third person down, Benjamin O'Brien of Randolph, through the following page 2579 through Kevin Christie of White River Junction, with the exception of we will not be appointing Brian Thomas of Shrewsbury twice. He's listed twice for the same appointment. I believe that's an error, but anyway, all of those appointments that are not underlined to be taken up as a group and approved without debate. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm going to clarify the motion. There is a reason that Brian Thompson is listed twice. Once is to be appointed to conclude a term, and the second one is for the appointment of the ensuing term.
I see.
So I believe the motion, if I might have misheard it, but I think I heard it slightly differently than it was stated, which is that the senator from Addison moves that the Senate confirm all of the appointments found on page 2578 through 2579 that are not underlined, starting with Benjamin O'Brien of Randolph on page 2578 through Kevin Christie of White River Junction on page, through and including Kevin Christie of White River Junction on page 2579. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate has confirmed the appointments just mentioned. Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now I would request that we go through the other confirmations, starting with Secretary Kristen Klauser, if that's with permission.
The Senator from Addison moved that we take up the confirmations as found on page 2577, and we will do so. So these are on the calendar, so there's no need to vote to do that. The first one that we have is is Kristen Klauser of Jericho as the Secretary of the Agency of Administration, and for the report of the Committee on Government Operations, the Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to finally report on the appointment of Kristen Klauser as Secretary of Administration. The Office of Secretary of Administration includes a small but mighty staff of 4 people, but it's really the center of the executive branch. The Secretary acts as the head of the governor's cabinet and the chief advisor to the governor. As Secretary Klauser reports, the Agency of Administration oversees how state government works, or as we might say in our committee, the operations of state government. The agency houses the Office of Racial Equity, the Chief Prevention and Chief Performance Officers, the Office of Risk Management, the Department of Libraries, Department of Finance and Management, Department of Taxes, Department of Buildings and General Services, and the Department of Human Resources. I list these because I didn't know until I took up this appointment. Secretary Klauser was appointed Secretary of Administration in December 2021 after serving as interim secretary for 1 month, following the almost retirement of Suzanne Young. Secretary Klauser served as deputy secretary for about a year prior to her appointment, after working 8 years as an assistant attorney general overseeing economic services. Prior to her time in state government, Secretary Klauser worked in a private law firm as a litigation associate. Secretary Klauser sees herself as a problem solver and has focused on ensuring that state government works in a more efficient and transparent manner and is able to measure performance using solid metrics and data. She is most proud of our state government's ability to deploy hundreds of millions of dollars of ARPA funding in an effective and timely manner during the COVID pandemic. She identified a key challenge currently as the difficulties of recruiting and retaining state employees, noting that the vacancy rates in some areas are just not sustainable. During our conversation with Secretary Klauser, it was clear that she cares about the well-being of state employees and tries to listen deeply to their concerns. She is engaging and smart and professional and was open to feedback and questions during the conversation with the Government Operations Committee. Her strong organizational and calm leadership skills are an asset to Vermont state government. Secretary Klauser grew up in upstate New York and graduated from Susquehanna University and Villanova Law School. She moved to Vermont in 2012 with her family and resides in the lovely town of Jericho. Your Government Operations Committee voted 6-0-0 to recommend the appointment of Kristen Klauser as Secretary of Administration, and we ask the Senate for its support. Thank you.
Question is, shall the Senate confirm the appointment of Kristen L. Klauser of Jericho as Secretary of the Agency of Administration for a term from and including March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28th, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and as qualified? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Cruz.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Aye.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewitt.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Pershman.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bihowski.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator McCormick. Senator Weeks.
Please list the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 28. Those voting nay, 0. And you have confirmed the appointment of Kristen L. Klauser as the Secretary of the Administration. We now vote for consideration Michael Harrington of Northfield as the Commissioner of the Department of Labor for the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. The Senator from Windsor, Senator Clarkson.
I will yield for this confirmation to the senior senator from Franklin.
The Senator from Windsor yields to the senior senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Michael Harrington of Northfield was appointed to the role of Deputy Commissioner for the Vermont Department of Labor in 2017 by Governor Phil Scott. In 2019, he became the interim commissioner, and in 2020, he was permanently appointed commissioner of the department. Born and raised in Bennington, Michael left Vermont to study in New York State, where he received his bachelor's and master's degree from the State University of New York at Plattsburgh. Prior to joining state service, Michael served as the Economic and Community Development Director for the town of Bennington, Vermont. He has also held the role of Chief Student Affairs Officer for Paul Smith College and Director of Client Relations and Training for the organizational development firm New Directions. 2013, he was named to Vermont Business Magazine's 40 Under 40 list. He currently serves as the chair of the board of the National Association of State Workforce Agencies. The vote in the Senate Economic, Housing, and General Affairs Committee was favorable, 4-0-1, and we recommend to the Senate that the Senate confirm Michael Harrington as Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Labor.
The question is, shall the Senate confirm the appointment of Michael A. Harrington of Northfield, Vermont as the Commissioner of the Department of Labor for a term from and including March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28th, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and as qualified? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewitt. Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell. Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris,
Yes.
Senator Pershing.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Starr,
Yes.
Senator Bukowski,
No.
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Weeks, Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator White,
Yes.
Senator Williams,
Yes.
Senator Renner,
Yes.
Senator Hewitt, Senator McCormick, Senator Weeks,
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 26. Those voting nay, 1. And you have appointed Michael A. Harrington of Northfield as the Commissioner of the Department of Labor. We now have up for consideration the appointment of Lindsay Curl of Middlesex for the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Now for the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, Senator from Windsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lindsay Curley was appointed Secretary of the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development by Governor Scott in September of 2019 after serving as the Commissioner of Labor for 2 years, which is when most of us in this chamber got to know her. ACCD encompasses the Departments of Economic Development, Housing and Community Development, and Tourism and Marketing, and Historic Preservation is part of one of those. These departments include many programs that serve the Vermont public by enhancing the Vermont business climate, marketing Vermont to tourists and others, and strengthening Vermont's communities in a wide variety of ways. Lindsay led the governor's Economic Mitigation and Recovery Leadership Team and Task Force during COVID-19, for which we are all very grateful to her, and was responsible for, among many things, the distribution of more than $300 million in economic relief funds to Vermont businesses. She served as lead for the governor's Restart Leadership Team, helping to shape policy decisions around how the state would safely reopen in the wake of this pandemic crisis. From January 2017 to September of 19, Lindsay served as the Commissioner of the Vermont Department of Labor, where she led over 300 employees and administers Vermont's workforce development, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, employment services programs, and Vermont's occupational safety and health programs. Prior to joining the administration, she owned and operated a business with her husband in Montpelier for nearly 2 decades. She has experience in running a business and was for many years an auditor for the international accounting firm KPMG. Lindsay is such a positive, pleasant person to do business with. She's an outspoken and strong advocate for growing Vermont's economy and strengthening our communities. She wants to continue her work growing our workforce, creating new opportunities for businesses in Vermont, building more housing, especially cultivating our tech industries and our micro business model, which she's particularly enamored of at the moment, as am I. Finishing the deployment of the ARPA federal dollars in productive ways and creating more housing. Lindsay lives in Middlesex with her husband and 3 children, and Senate Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs asks for the support of this body in confirming Lindsay Curley.
Question is, shall the Senate confirm the appointment of Lindsay Curley as the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for a term from and including March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28th, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and is qualified? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baruch.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Caldwell.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewitt. Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Pershing.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bukowski.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator Buick. Senator McCormick. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 27. Those voting nay, 0. And you have appointed Lindsay Curley as the Secretary of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. We now have up for consideration the appointment of Sabina Haskell of Burlington as the Chair of the Natural Resources Board. And now for the report of the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy, the Senator from Addison, Senator Bray.
Mr. President, as just noted, I'm here to report out a recommendation for Sabina Haskell to continue as the Natural Resources Board Chair. Act 250 reaches into many areas of life, and Ms. Haskell is well suited to this position because of her breadth of experience in both the public and private sectors, in both management and her real strength in communications. So currently she is Vermont Natural Resources Board Chair, a position she began in 2021. Prior to that, she had served as in the Department of Liquor and Lottery as a Deputy Commissioner. Prior to that, she served at the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation for the period 2013 through 2021, where she had a role as Director of Public Affairs. Prior to that, she was at Fairpoint Communications from through 2010 through 2013, where she had a role again in public relations and affairs. As Director of Public Relations, she had broad duties across the implementation of a variety of programs. Prior to that, she was at the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources for the period 2007 to 2010. And prior to that, she worked in the news area at News Media Group, as well as the editor at the Brattleboro Reformer and Bennington Banners. She has served on a variety of other boards. She has a Bachelor's of Arts in Journalism from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee recommends her confirmation by the Senate.
Question now is, shall the Senate confirm the appointment of Sabina Haskell of Burlington as the Chair of the Natural Resource Board for a term from and including March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28th, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and is qualified? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Blue.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collins.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Buick.
Yes.
Senator Harden.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashimi. Senator Engel.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Ryan.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza. Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Perschlick.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bobowski.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator Hashim. Senator McCormick. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 27. Those voting nay, 0. And you have appointed Sabina Haskell of Burlington as the Chair of the Natural Resources Board. We now have up for consideration Craig Bolio of Essex Junction for the Commissioner of the Department of Taxes. For the report of the Committee on Finance, the Senator from Washington, Senator Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish we could bottle Commissioner Bolio's enthusiasm for his job and pass it out to everyone. He is probably the most enthusiastic commissioner we've ever dealt with. He loves his job. He started out as a temp in 2011 with the tax department, and he worked his way up through, he says he is a tech guy, and he was very instrumental in getting the tax department whole new computer system, tax system up and running. He worked his way up through and until 2018. He became the deputy commissioner. Then in 19, He became acting commissioner and then was appointed commissioner. He takes great pride in making the tax department user-friendly. And I will say, as one who has on record as having a great deal of difficulty filing my sales tax online, that the computer system has become consistently more friendly. And this year I did it all by myself. I didn't have to call, but he has worked so that the average person who is not a tech genius can file their taxes online and have that convenience. He takes great pride in the morale in the tax department. And some of us remember when the tax department's morale was not so great. They were having trouble holding on to long-time employees. So he has reversed that trend. They work on their core values, which is service, integrity, growth, and community. And they work on that. They have a lot of team meetings, group meetings, and that's really their focus, to make the tax department work for the people of Vermont. Your vote in committee was 7-0-0, and we asked this body to confirm Craig Bolio as the Commissioner of Taxes.
Question is, shall the Senate confirm Craig Bolio of Essex Junction as the Commissioner of Department of Taxes for a term from and including March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28th, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and is qualified? Are you ready for the question? Roll call. Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baruch.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brown.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittister.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Colmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewitt.
Yes.
Senator Harding.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Engel.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyon.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Kirschlick.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bihowski. Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 28. Those voting nay, 0. And you have confirmed Craig Bolio as the Commissioner of the Department of Taxes. We now have up for consideration Adam Gresham of Warren as the Commissioner of the Department of Finance and Management. For the Committee on Finance, the report, Senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Adam Gresham of Warren was appointed by Governor Phil Scott as the Commissioner of the Department of Finance and Management in June of 2017. Prior to his appointment, Gresham served since 2009 in the House of Representatives, where he worked on education, healthcare, and tax issues. Gresham was a partner in Summit Ventures NE LLC, the owner of Sugarbush Resort. Over 18 years of ownership, he directed many different departments and helped oversee Sugarbush's transformation into a four-season resort. Prior to his employment at Sugarbush, he worked for 16 years as a research analyst and lead portfolio manager in the global bond group of Scudder, Stevens, and Clark in Boston. He was educated at Bowdoin College, BA magna cum laude in Romance languages and economics. The Romance languages are particularly important in his present job. He also was educated at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, where he received a Master of Arts in Law and Diplomacy. He became a chartered financial analyst in 1990. Adam is married to Ann Casson Gresham, and they have 3 children. The vote in the Senate Finance Committee in favor of his candidacy was 6-0-1, and we ask for the Senate to confirm Adam Gresham. Thank you, Mr. President.
Bless you. The question is, shall the Senate confirm Adam Gresham of Warren, Vermont as the Commissioner of the Department of Finance and Management for a term from and including March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28th, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and is qualified? Are you ready for the question? Roll call. Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru. Yes. Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Caldwell.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Buick.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Pinto.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Perschlick.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Zihowski. Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Zihowski. Senator Weeks. Senator McCormick.
Please list the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 26. Those voting nay, 0. And you have confirmed Adam Gresham of Warren as the Commissioner of the Department of Finance and Management. We now have up for consideration Jenny Samuelson of Shelburne as the Secretary of the Agency of Human Services for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare. The Senator from Chittenden Southeast, Senator Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jenny Samuelson was appointed as Secretary on March 28th, 2022, Secretary of the Agency of Human Services. She's previously served as Deputy Secretary of the agency beginning in June 2020 and served as Interim Secretary since January 22. Prior to this appointment, Secretary Samuelson served as Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Vermont Health Access, DVA, which oversees Medicaid, and with focuses on the intersection of payment and delivery system reform that is currently going on, the adoption of value-based payments, and organizational performance improvement. Jenny was also a founding leader of the Vermont Blueprint of Health during the development of key healthcare reforms, that is patient-centered medical homes, regional community health teams, complex care models, and the hub and spoke system, where we recently have approved a pilot program for expansion of the system of care for those with substance use disorder. Throughout her career, Jenny has administered numerous community and statewide public health programs, including programs for healthcare workforce development, tobacco cessation in health systems, lead poisoning prevention, long-term care. Jenny holds a Master's of Science in Community Health Education from Southern Illinois University. She is very interested in continuing leadership within the healthcare reform that we passed under Act 167 and is working collaboratively with the Green Mountain Care Board to see the results of that work. The Committee on Health and Welfare voted 5-0-0 to recommend that the Senate confirm Jenny Samuelson as Secretary of the Agency of Human Services.
Question is, shall the Senate confirm Jenny Samuelson of Shelburne, Vermont as the Secretary of Human Services for a term from and including March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28th, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and is qualified? Are you ready for the question? Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden. Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Caldwell.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Buick.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison. Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Pershing.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears. Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bieholsky. Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator Harrison. Senator McDonald. Senator McCormick. Senator Sears. Senator Bieholsky. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 24, those voting nay, 0, and you've appointed Jenny Samuelson as the Secretary of the Agency of Human Services. We now have up for consideration Don Philibert of South Burlington as the Chair of the Board of Health for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare Center from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dawn Philibert has been chair of the Board of Health for many years, and she as a public representative. Over time, that board has taken on less and less responsibility in overseeing health risks, and the Department of Health has become those departments and folks who are professionals have taken over the work of the board. The board currently has a very narrow focus and does not meet frequently. In the discussion with Dawn Philibert, because her background has been involved in the Board of Health and she understands the narrowing of the focus of the board. She understands that this board will probably be sunset fairly soon, but she is interested in continuing to serve on the board and as chair, and where she has been supported both by her peers on the board and the Department of Health. We did vote to support this, a recommendation that Dawn Philibert be confirmed as chair of the Board of Health. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question now is, shall the Senate confirm Dawn Philibert of South Burlington as the chair of the Board of Health for a term from and including October 17th, 2022 to and including February 28th, 2027, and until a successor is appointed and is qualified? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call's been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chipman.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewitt.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yeah.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Mitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyon.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Pershman.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bieholsky. Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator McCormick. Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Bieholsky. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 25, those voting nay, 0, and you have appointed Dawn Philibert as the chair of South Burlington as the chair of the public member of the Board of Health. Excuse me. Got it. We now have up for consideration Christopher Winters of Berlin as the Commissioner of the Department for Children and Families for the report of the Committee on Health and Welfare, Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. Christopher Winters is on our calendar here twice because there are two separate confirmations. One is February 19th, 2023 to February 28th, and then March 1st, 2023 that goes to February 28th, 2025. If confirmed as Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families, Mr. Winters will replace Dr. Harry Chen, who has served as interim commissioner since October. Mr. Winters grew up in Williamstown, Vermont. He now resides in the town of Berlin, and his wife, Sarah, and 4 children with his wife Sarah and 4 children. He's an active member of the community, having served as chair of the local school board, and he also coached Little League Baseball. Mr. Winters most recently served as Deputy Secretary of State, a post that he held for the past 8 years. Mr. Winters started his career in that very office 25 years ago as staff attorney, then as director of the Office of Professional Regulation, where he was focused on public protection through regulation of 50 professions and 80,000 licensed professionals. At the Secretary of State's office, Mr. Winters oversaw a wide spectrum of HR workforce issues, technology contracts, and builds, and was primarily responsible for external and internal communications for several years. He led the legislative agenda, served as records officer, and regularly managed 8 to 12 direct reports for 2 decades. He did much of the operational heavy lifting behind the scenes for an agency of 80 people with diverse job expectations and missions, but united in purpose, serving Vermonters. Mr. Winter has worked with nearly every agency in government across multiple administrations. He's particularly proud of his nonpartisan collaborative work in the legislature and with the governor's team, followed by successful on-the-ground implementation of reforms in elections, professional regulation, business registration, and consumer protection. For his entire career, Mr. Winters has sought to evolve and innovate with continuous improvements to systems, often under intense scrutiny as experienced with the 2016 and 2020 elections. He is proud of the emergency transition to a vote by mail election so that no Vermonter had to choose between their health and their right to vote in 2020. And he's no stranger to pressure, long hours, media attention, or crisis management. The vote to confirm Mr. Winters was 5-0-0, and the Health and Welfare Committee asks for you to concur. Thank you, Mr. President.
There will be one vote, but it will be on the 2 terms of confirmation. And the question is, shall Senate confirm Christopher Winters of Berlin as the Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families for a term from and including February 19, 2023 to and include February 28, 2023, and from March 1st, 2023 to and including February 28, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and is qualified. Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chitty.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Caldwell.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewitt.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Engel.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormack. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Pershing.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bieholsky. Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator McCormack. Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Bieholsky. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of the vote. Those voting yea, 25. Those voting nay, 0. And confirm Christopher Winters of Berlin as the Commissioner of the Department for Children and Families. We now have up for consideration the appointment of John Healing. And we correct on that. As the of East Montpelier, the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation. And the report of the committee on natural resources, the Senator from Washington, Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do believe you have that correct. John Bueling has been an environmental lawyer for the last 30 years. He started his career in the United States Justice Department in the Torts Division in Washington, D.C. He then moved to Boston to work for the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office in the Environmental Protections Division. He has since worked for the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the Vermont Attorney General's Office in the Environmental Protection Division, and the Vermont Department of Public Service. He has experience dealing with policies regarding hazardous waste, brownfields, renewable energy, utilities regulation, and land use. His experience leading and managing, he has experience leading and managing groups as he was the Deputy Regional Director of the Bureau of Air and Waste in the Central Regional Office of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. While he has only been in this role for less than a year, he reports that he loves the team he is working with and that the work is, quote, never boring. The Committee on Natural Resources and Energy voted to recommend the confirmation of John Beeling as the Commissioner of Department of Environmental Conservation 401 and encourages the body to do the same.
Question now is, shall the Senate confirm the appointment of John Beeling of East Montpelier as the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Blue.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator King. Senator Chitty.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Healy.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim. Yes. Senator Ingle.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell. Senator Lyon. Senator McDonald. Senator Madden.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Nora.
Yes.
Senator Kershaw.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bobowski. Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Weston.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Lyons. Senator McDonald. Senator McCormick. Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Bobowski. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 24. Those voting nay, 0. And you have confirmed John Beeling as of East Montpelier as the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation for a term from and including July 13, 2022 to and including February 28, 2023, and until a successor is appointed. We now have up for consideration the appointment of Wendy Knight of Panton as the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. For the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, the Senator from Windsor, Senator Clarkson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wendy Knight is a strategic business and marketing executive with 2 decades of private and public sector leadership experience. She was appointed Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery in December of 2021. And in that capacity, she helps regulate and oversee 2 enterprise funds, the Vermont Lottery, which generates $30 million roughly annually to the Education Fund, and the division and the Department of the Division of Liquor Control that generates about $20 million annually to the General Fund. She's proud of having completed the operational and budget integration of the $280 million department. We merged them, as many of you will recall, several years ago, and has overseen 2 major projects that modernize state government: an online licensing portal and a new gaming vendor conversion, and launched initiatives and advanced legislation that has better aligned department operations and the state's liquor laws with evolving industry practices. Wendy hopes to continue her work, modernizing the department, updating rules, updating our statutes to align with current practice, and getting more product and more Vermont product into the 802 shelf. I first met Wendy when she came on board and was appointed our Commissioner of Tourism and Marketing in 2017, and we've been working with her ever since in Senate Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, and all vices. In her 2 years leading that department, Wendy created a first-in-nation economic development tourism initiative that resulted in a 34% conversion rate and significant national media coverage, including NBC Nightly News and NPR. She created the Hospitality Workforce work group to advance workforce shortage solutions in that sector, and was part of the senior leadership team at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and a strategic lead for Think Vermont, the state's economic development initiative. She's a former craft beer store owner and has significant international experience consulting in the hospitality and food industry. She's a founding member and vice chair of the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaboration, and she's currently a commissioner with the Vermont Commission on Women and serves on the executive committee and equity and diversity committee of the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance. She's a graduate of Cornell and resides in Addison County. And on a vote of 5-0-0, Senate Economic Development recommends that the Senate confirm Wendy Knight as the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Thank you.
The question now is, shall the Senate confirm Wendy Knight of Hampton, Vermont as the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery for a term from and including March 1st, 2023, to and including February 28, 2025, and until successor is appointed and is qualified. Are you ready for your question? Roll call. Say roll call again on the question. Are you ready for your question? If so, Secretary Johnson, call roll.
Senator Baruch.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden. Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Hewlett. Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hakeem.
Yes.
Senator Engel.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lonnie.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Kershaw.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Wolfson.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator McCormick. Senator Ron Hinsdale. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 26. Those voting nay, 0. And you have confirmed Wendy Knight of Panton as the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery for a term from and including March 1st, 2023, to and including February 28, 2025, and until a successor is appointed and has qualified. With that, I would just like to thank the Senator from Rutland for a lovely dance, but the music has come to an end, and I'd like to recognize the Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would move that the Senate suspend its rules to message the actions we took this morning to the House, and that would be on H53, an act relating to driver's license suspensions, H102, an act relating to the Art and State Buildings Program, H161, an act relating to issuance of burn permits, H206, an act relating to miscellaneous changes affecting the duties of the Department of Vermont Health Access, H222, an act relating to reducing overdoses, H305, an act relating to professions and occupations regulated by the Office of Professional Regulation, H414, an act relating to establishing an unused drug repository for Vermont, and H493, an act relating to capital construction and state bond.
Now, the Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to message your actions on H53, H102, H161, H206, H222, H305, H414, and H493 to the House forthwith. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have voted to suspend your rules, message to the House forthwith. H53, an act relating to driver license suspension. H102, an act relating to the Art and the State Buildings Program. H161, an act relating to issuance of burning permits. H206, an act relating to miscellaneous changes affecting the duties of the Department of Vermont Health Access. H222, an act relating to reducing overdoses. H305, an act relating to professions and occupations regulated by the Office of Professional Regulation. H414, an act relating to establishing an unused drug repository for Vermont. And H493, an act relating to capital construction and state bonding. We now have for consideration a resolution to be read and adopted. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
SCR 6, Senate concurrent resolution honoring Vanessa Davison, for her extraordinary dedication as a staff member of the General Assembly. Whereas Vanessa Davison, a daily Hardwick to Montpelier commuter, has an abiding work ethic that is second to none. And she has always performed her legislative staffing duties courteously, effectively, and with the utmost professionalism. And whereas in 1978, following her graduation from Hazen Union High School, she started her public service career in the General Assembly, reporting for work at the former Legislative Council. And whereas during the next decade, Vanessa Davison assisted attorneys and support staff in myriad administrative and research tasks, eventually managing the Legislative Council's Wayne computer system as the General Assembly entered the digital age. And whereas a pivotal year for Vanessa Davison was 1988, when she embarked on a new career path as the Journal Clerk of the Vermont Senate, working collaboratively with Senate Secretaries Robert Gibson, David Gibson, and since 2011, John Bloomer. And whereas Vanessa Davison quickly mastered the intricacies required to prepare the daily and annual Senate journals, and whereas on occasion she ferried text pages to a halfway point along I-89 in order to deliver them to a representative of the Burlington-based printer. And on many nights, Vanessa Davison sat patiently at her desk while the next day's journal slowly transmitted to the printer's office, a duty that improved technology fortunately eliminated. And whereas senators knew they could rely on her discretion and knowledge in discussing parliamentary matters, and she had a great rapport with staff throughout the legislative branch. And whereas during the past year, she has expertly trained her successor, ensuring that the high quality of the Senate Journal will continue. And whereas in the spring of 2023, after 45 rewarding years on the staff of the General Assembly, including 35 years in the office of the Senate Secretary, Vanessa Davison is concluding her legislative staff service. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly honors Vanessa Davison for her extraordinary dedication as a staff member of the General Assembly, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of this resolution to Vanessa Davison.
The question is, shall the Senate adopt the resolution?
Roll call, please.
Roll call has been requested. Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baruth.
Yes, with explanation.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Gulick.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick. Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Perschlick.
Yes.
Senator Rahm Hinsdale. Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bihovsky.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Aye.
Senator Weeks. Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Senator McDonald. Senator McCormick. Senator Rahm Hinsdale. Senator Weeks.
Please listen to the results of your vote, and I might point out that Vanessa tallied the vote as well. Senate voted 26-0 to adopt the resolution. For vote explanation, the senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I voted yes because I love Vanessa Davis.
Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that business partially concluded, I would move that pending announcements, the Senate stand in adjournment until 10 a.m. Monday morning, May 8th. And if I might lead off, two things. One is that I say this is partially concluded because there is another part in the cloakroom where we will have a more informal chance to thank Vanessa. The other thing I wanted senators to remember is that Monday we will be meeting at 10 a.m. It will not be a token session. It will be a regular session. You'll notice on the notice calendar we have a large number of bills. We'll be trying to work maybe from 10 to noon or so on Monday, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, but right around there. I will say that going forward into the next week, attendance is key for everyone. So please, everyone be here. I understand that a few people can't be here Monday because we announced that a little late, but hopefully Tuesday through the rest of the week, we have perfect attendance. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that Senate pending announcements would adjourn until Monday, May 8th at 10 a.m. Are there any announcements? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet at 1:30, and we will also be meeting on Monday.
Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Gov Ops will meet at 1:30, and we also will be meeting on Monday. And may I inquire of the pro tem?
The senator from Chittenden Central made the motion and therefore is being interrogated, I suppose.
I'm going to ask you, is there a rules meeting after?
Thank you. That was my later announcement. We will have a very brief Rules Committee meeting in seats 1 through 5. And if the Rules Committee could join us there just for 3 minutes so we don't miss Kate, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Good for the rest of us. Senator from Bennington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Education will meet for about an hour today, starting at 1:30.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate stand adjournment until Monday, May 8th at 10 a.m. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand adjournment until Monday, May 8th at 10 a.m.